In the late 1940s, the Second World War had ended, but true peace had not arrived. The United States and the Soviet Union, formerly allies against Nazi Germany, now glared at each other across a divided world, both possessing weapons that could obliterate entire civilizations. And beneath it all was a growing fear that the next war would not be fought merely with soldiers, but with advanced technologies that would redefine the very meaning of power. And far from the prying eyes of cameras and newspapers, something deeply unsettling was happening. High above the frozen deserts of the Soviet Union, something entered Earth's atmosphere, and it was not from here. The Urals, a perfect place to hide secrets. The Ural Mountains stretch like a scar across Russia, dividing Europe from Asia. Harsh, isolated, and unforgiving, they were the ideal location for secrecy. During World War II, entire factories were dismantled and moved eastward into this region, hidden from German bombers. After the war, these same mountains became home to nuclear research facilities, weapons laboratories, and early warning radar stations. By 1948, the Soviets had begun constructing a primitive but rapidly expanding air defense network. Radar towers dotted the wilderness, manned by young conscripts trained to identify enemy aircraft long before they reached strategic cities. But these stations were not designed to search for the unknown. They were designed to detect Americans. And yet, on a cold night in late autumn of 1948, one such station detected something no training manual could explain. The radar station near the eastern slope of the Urals was operating under standard conditions. Snowfall was light, visibility moderate, and air traffic non-existent. At approximately 22:40 local time, Sergeant Anatoly Morozov noticed an anomaly on his scope. At first, it appeared as a faint blip, barely distinguishable from background interference. But then it accelerated. The object crossed several kilometers in seconds, abruptly halted, and then reversed direction at a perfect 90-degree angle. Radar operators froze. Aircraft could not do this. Not Soviet, not American, not experimental. Morozov called his superior officer, believing the equipment was malfunctioning. Diagnostics showed nothing wrong. A second radar station confirmed the same object, moving in perfect synchronization. What made the situation even stranger was its altitude. The object hovered far above conventional aircraft ceilings, yet well below orbital height. It occupied a region of the sky that, at the time, belonged to nothing known to science. The command decision came quickly. Scramble interceptors. 2 MiG-15 fighter jets were launched from a nearby airbase, piloted by experienced veterans of the Great Patriotic War. These men had faced German aces and anti-aircraft fire. They were not easily shaken. As the jets climbed, radar operators guided them toward the unidentified object. Within minutes, visual contact was established. What they saw defied description. Suspended in the dark sky was a metallic sphere, roughly the size of a small aircraft. It emitted a faint red glow, not bright, not aggressive, but unmistakably present. There were no wings, no exhaust, no visible propulsion system of any kind. The object did not move like an aircraft. It drifted with intention, responding to the fighter's movements as though aware of being observed. One pilot reported that every time he adjusted his heading, the object subtly mirrored his maneuver, maintaining distance, never approaching, never fleeing. Then, without warning, it accelerated vertically, not diagonally, not gradually, straight upward. Within seconds, it vanished beyond radar range. No sonic boom followed. No turbulence. No atmospheric disturbance. It was as if physics itself had momentarily been rewritten. Within hours, the incident reached the highest levels of Soviet command. A classified report was drafted and distributed to senior military and intelligence officials. It was labeled simply File 10. The document described the object as a non-conventional aerial phenomenon exhibiting controlled movement and advanced propulsion. Notably, it avoided the word aircraft. First, the report emphasized 3 key points. Second, the object demonstrated intelligent control. And third, it possessed technological capabilities beyond any known human design. It showed no hostile behavior. That final point disturbed officials more than anything else. Hostile intentions could be prepared for. Observation could not. Inside the Kremlin, debate erupted. Some scientists argued the object was a secret American prototype, perhaps a high-altitude reconnaissance platform or early attempt at anti-gravity propulsion. Others rejected this idea outright, pointing out that even the most advanced U.S. aircraft could not perform such maneuvers. A smaller, quieter group proposed something far more unsettling. What if it wasn't human? Officially, this hypothesis was dismissed as fantasy. Unofficially, it was recorded, discussed, and quietly investigated. Stalin himself reportedly reviewed the file. Witnesses later claimed he remained silent for several minutes after reading the report before asking a single question. Did it try to communicate? The answer was no, but that offered little comfort. Within weeks, the Soviet Union launched a covert initiative known internally as Project Krasnaya Zvezda, Red Star. Its mission was simple in wording but impossible in practice. Observe, track, and understand the unknown aerial phenomenon. New radar systems were deployed across the Urals and Siberia. Pilots were instructed to document any anomalies without engaging. Scientific teams began studying electromagnetic disturbances, radiation levels, and atmospheric anomalies linked to the sightings. Publicly, the government dismissed rumors as weather balloons or optical illusions. Privately, fear grew. And why? Because the object returned. In early 1949, nearly a year after the first incident, radar operators once again detected the same signature. Same speed, same altitude, same impossible movements. This time, the object did something different. This time, it descended. It hovered over a remote valley for nearly 3 minutes, bathing the snow-covered ground in a dull red glow. Instruments began to fail. Compasses spun wildly. Several technicians reported sudden nausea and disorientation. Medical reports later described symptoms consistent with radiation exposure, yet no known radiation source was detected. Then, just as before, the object ascended straight upward and vanished. And again, no trace remained. By now, Soviet leadership faced an uncomfortable truth. This was not a reconnaissance flight. It was not an experiment. It was not an accident. Whatever the object was, it appeared to be observing Earth, studying its defenses, its reactions, its technologies. And it showed no urgency, as if time meant something different to it. A classified note added to File 10 summarized the growing unease. The phenomenon exhibits deliberate restraint. Its behavior suggests assessment rather than aggression. At the end of File 10, a single handwritten sentence was added by an unknown official. It would later become one of the most chilling statements in Soviet intelligence history. The object showed no hostile intent, only observation. That line would echo through decades of classified programs, unexplained encounters, and whispered conversations behind closed doors. Because if something was watching humanity in 1948, the question was not why it came. The question was whether it ever truly left. The Red Star incident was buried under layers of secrecy, denied by officials, and erased from public memory. But it marked the beginning of something far larger. A pattern, a presence, a silent watcher in the skies. And this was only the beginning. By 1950, the world had changed. Radar systems expanded across continents. Spy planes pierced the upper atmosphere. Rockets scraped the edge of space. And somewhere above it all, something else continued to watch. The Soviet Union no longer doubted that the object seen in 1948 was real. What terrified them was that it had returned, and this time, it was not simply passing through. By early 1950, Soviet radar stations across Siberia, Kazakhstan, and the Ural corridor began reporting similar anomalies. They appeared irregularly, often weeks apart, but always shared the same characteristics. Sudden appearance at extreme altitude, movement without inertia, complete silence, no exhaust signature, no identifiable propulsion. Most disturbing of all was the precision. The objects never strayed into civilian airspace. They hovered only near military zones, missile test areas, radar installations, and nuclear research sites. To Soviet analysts, this was no coincidence. These were not random sightings. They were inspections then. In response, Project Red Star was expanded into a multi-branch operation under direct oversight of the KGB and the Ministry of Defense. Its new objectives were chillingly direct. First, track all unidentified aerial phenomena. Second, determine intent. Third, attempt controlled interaction. And fourth, prepare countermeasures. Entire research facilities were constructed in secrecy beneath the Ural Mountains. Scientists from physics, psychology, and emerging cybernetics programs were reassigned under strict confidentiality. Officially, these installations studied atmospheric anomalies. Unofficially, they were preparing for something no one dared name. In late 1951, a radar station near Novaya Zemlya reported sustained contact lasting over 12 minutes, the longest on record. 3 interceptor aircraft were scrambled. Only 2 returned. The missing pilot, Lieutenant Sergei Antonov, vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no debris, no distress signal, only a final radio transmission recorded and sealed under top classification. In this last radio transmission, the pilot said, "It's above me, not moving. It's looking at..." The transmission ended abruptly. Search operations found nothing, not even a fuel slick. Antonov's name was erased from official records. But inside Project Red Star, he became something else. A warning. By 1952, Soviet scientists reached an uncomfortable conclusion. The objects were not obeying known physical laws. They accelerated without inertia. They produced no heat. They appeared unaffected by gravity. Some researchers suggested they were not machines in the human sense at all. One internal paper proposed that the objects were field-based constructs capable of manipulating space-time locally. Another suggested they were not vehicles, but probes, tools, extensions of something much farther away. The most radical theory was dismissed publicly, but preserved secretly. These objects may not occupy space as we understand it. They may intersect with our reality only temporarily. Between 1953 and 1955, sightings increased dramatically. The objects appeared closer to populated regions. They hovered longer. They reacted faster. Pilots reported that the craft anticipated maneuvers before they were executed, almost as if they were reading intent. During one encounter, a Soviet MiG pilot attempted to fire a warning shot. His weapon system failed instantly. Every electrical system in the aircraft shut down. Moments later, power returned, just in time for him to land. The message was clear. Now, the psychological toll began to surface. Radar operators developed insomnia, paranoia, and auditory hallucinations. Several reported dreams of vast, empty spaces and burning red stars. Medical teams diagnosed stress, but symptoms persisted even after reassignment. One technician wrote in a private journal, "It feels like being watched by something that understands you better than you understand yourself." Suicides were quietly recorded as accidents. Others simply disappeared. In 1954, Project Red Star attempted something unprecedented. If the objects were observing, perhaps they could also listen. A special transmission array was constructed in a remote Siberian basin. It emitted mathematically structured radio pulses, prime numbers, geometric sequences, basic physical constants. For 3 nights, nothing happened. But on the 4th night, all instruments simultaneously spiked. A low-frequency resonance spread across the facility, strong enough to be felt in the bones. The signal lasted exactly 17 seconds. When it ended, every recording device was wiped clean. No data, no logs, no explanation. Only one handwritten note from a technician found catatonic at his console. "They heard us." By 1955, Soviet leadership was deeply divided. One faction believed the phenomenon was neutral, perhaps even protective. Another believed it was a long-term reconnaissance effort preceding invasion or intervention. A third, smaller group feared something worse: that humanity was being studied the way humans study animals. Observed, catalogued, and left undisturbed until needed. In late 1956, after years of escalating encounters, the Soviet Union made a final decision. Project Red Star would be officially terminated. Not because the phenomenon disappeared, but because it could not be controlled. Files were sealed, personnel reassigned or silenced. Entire research wings were dismantled overnight. Officially, the project had never existed. Unofficially, its data was archived in a restricted vault known only to a handful of party officials. Before the shutdown, a final report was added. A summary of 6 years of observation. Its last sentence read, "The watchers do not interfere, they do not communicate, they do not leave, they simply observe." As the Cold War intensified, attention shifted to nuclear missiles, space races, and proxy wars. But high above all of it, something remained. Silent. Patient. Watching. And in the years to come, humanity would begin to notice something else. The watchers were no longer alone.